let's talk about something that most salespeople don't want to discuss honestly. Cold calling. We've been told for years cold calling is dead, that it doesn't work anymore, that nobody picks up the phone, that social selling is the future, that inbound marketing has replaced the need to interrupt people, that we should be attracting prospects, not chasing them. And if you spend any time on LinkedIn, you've seen the posts. Cold calling is dead. Here's what works instead. Why I stopped cold calling and tripled my sales. The cold call is a relic of the past. It's time to evolve. And I get the appeal of that message. I really do. Because cold calling is hard. It's uncomfortable. It puts you in a vulnerable position. And if someone tells you that you don't have to do it anymore, that there's an easier way, of course, you want to believe them. But here's what Jeb says, and this is important. The argument that cold calling is dead is an inane argument focused on semantics. It's a distraction. It's a way for people to avoid the real issue, because the real issue isn't whether you call a prospect cold or warm. The real issue is whether you're willing to interrupt. Let me explain what I mean. When you reach out to someone, anyone, who isn't expecting to hear from you, you're interrupting them. Whether you call them, whether you email them, whether you DM them on LinkedIn, whether you knock on their door, whether you walk up to them at an event, you're interrupting their day. You're taking their attention from whatever they're doing and directing it towards you. That's the essence of prospecting. Interruption. And here's the truth that most people don't want to admit. The fear of cold calling isn't really about the cold part. It's about the interruption. It's about the vulnerability of reaching out to someone and potentially being rejected. It's about the possibility that they'll be annoyed or rude or dismissive. It's about putting yourself on the line and not knowing how it's going to go. That's what we're really afraid of. Not the temptation of the call, the act of interruption itself. Jeb tells a story that proves the point beautifully. He's working with a company that has a team of young, inexperienced sales reps. And they've been given what should be the easiest possible assignment. Call dormant customers. Not strangers, not cold leads, people who have already bought from the company, people who know the brand, people who have an existing relationship, the warmest possible calls you could imagine. And these reps, they were paralyzed. They made every excuse in the book. They planned to make a call. They organized their desk. They researched and prepared. They did everything except pick up the phone. And they exhibit the exact same anxiety that you'd expect from someone calling a complete stranger. Think about that. Those weren't cold calls. They were people who had already raised their hands, already said yes once, already trusted the company enough to buy. And the reps were still terrified because it was never about the coldness. It was about the interruption. It was about the fear of hearing no. So Jeb does what Jeb does. He sits down, he picks up the phone, he starts dialing. He doesn't overthink it. He doesn't prepare for hours. He just calls. 25 dials. He books 3 appointments, just like that. And the reps are watching this. They're seeing that it's possible, that the monsters they imagined weren't real, that the dormant customers weren't going to bite their heads off. And something shifts. They start calling. They start having conversations. And once they got over that initial fear, once they proved to themselves that they could do it, they became phenomenally successful. They generated $100,000 in weekly sales from that same list they'd been afraid to call. The only thing that changed was their willingness to interrupt. I've lived this in my own career. When I started doing face-to-face fundraising, I was terrified, not of the cause. I believed in what I was raising money for, not of the people. I genuinely liked talking to strangers. I was terrified of the interruption. Picture it. You're standing in a shopping center. People are walking by, minding their own business. They're going to grab lunch. They're running errands. They're checking their phones. And your job is to step into their path and ask for a moment of their time. That first day, every fiber of my being resisted. Who am I to bother these people? What right do I have to interrupt their day? They're going to be annoyed. They're going to be rude. They're going to think I'm one of those charity people. And you know what? Some of them were annoyed. Some of them were rude. Some of them looked at me like I had 3 heads. But most of them were fine. They either stopped and listened, or they politely said no and kept walking. And the ones who stopped, some of them became monthly donors. Some of them gave significant amounts. Some of them thanked me for approaching them. They were glad I interrupted because they cared about the cause. They just didn't know about it until I stopped them. That's when it hit me. The interruption isn't an imposition. It's an invitation. I wasn't bothering people. I was offering them an opportunity. An opportunity to learn about something that mattered, an opportunity to make a difference, an opportunity that they wouldn't have had if I'd stayed silent and let them walk by. The same thing is true for whatever you're selling. If you believe in it, if it genuinely helps people, then you're not bothering them by reaching out. You're serving them. You're giving them the chance to solve a problem they might have. You're opening a door they might want to walk through. But you can't walk through it if you don't open it. And opening it requires interruption. Jeb tells another story that drives this home. He's working with a group of insurance agents, and these agents have been given a simple task: call their existing customers, people who had already bought cars and home insurance from them. The purpose of the call is to set an appointment to review their coverage and to see if there are gaps. Maybe they have an umbrella policy. Maybe there's a cross-sell opportunity. Simple, easy, low stakes. And these agents made every excuse imaginable. One of them actually said this to Jeb: I didn't sign up for cold calling. Cold calling. He called it cold calling. Calling his own customers. People who already trust him. People who already give him money. He called that cold calling. And Jeb politely explained that calling a current client was about as far from cold calling as Perth, Australia is from New York City. It's not even close. But in that agent's mind, it was the same thing because it involved picking up the phone and interrupting someone. And that's the part he didn't want to do. So let me ask you something. What are you avoiding? What calls are you not making? What conversations are you not starting? And what story are you telling yourself to justify it? Because here's what I've learned. Every story we tell ourselves about why we can't prospect is just a sophisticated way of saying, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of being annoyed. I'm afraid of hearing no. I'm afraid of feeling vulnerable. And that's okay. That's human. That's normal. But it's not an excuse. The top performers in any sales organization aren't fearless. They feel the same fear you do. They just don't let it stop them. They pick up the phone anyway. They knock on the door anyway. They send the message anyway. They interrupt anyway. And because they're willing to do what others won't, they get results that others don't. Here's the reframe I want you to take away from this. Every time you avoid a prospecting activity, you're not protecting yourself. You're depriving your future self of opportunities. You're leaving money on the table. You're giving those opportunities to your competitors. You're choosing short-term comfort over long-term success. And every time you make a call, send an email, knock on a door, every time you interrupt, you're making a deposit in your future. You're building your pipeline. You're creating options. You're ensuring that 3 months from now, you'll have people to talk to. The interruption is not the enemy. The avoidance of interruption is the enemy. And once you accept that, once you make peace with the fact that prospecting requires you to be a little uncomfortable, everything changes. Jeb has this metaphor in the book that I think about all the time. He says salespeople are like horse riders. Horses can sense fear. They have the innate ability to feel when the person on their back is nervous, uncertain, lacking confidence. And when they sense that weakness, they take advantage. They start testing boundaries. They start doing what they want instead of what you want. They might even throw you off. But when a rider is confident, when the rider knows what they're doing, the horse falls in line. The horse respects the rider. The horse follows the lead. Prospects are the same way. They can sense fear. They can feel weakness. They can tell when you're not confident. And when they sense it, they take advantage. They give you brush offs. They make excuses. They string you along. They don't take you seriously. But when you're confident, when you believe in what you're doing, when you approach them like a professional who has something valuable to offer, the dynamic shifts. They listen, they engage, they take you seriously. Confidence doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from action. It comes from repetition. It comes from making enough calls that you've seen every scenario. It comes from getting rejected enough times that rejection loses its sting. You can't think your way into confidence. You have to act your way into it. And that starts with being willing to interrupt. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Are you willing? Not are you comfortable, not are you excited, not do you want to? Are you willing? Because willingness is enough. You don't have to love prospecting. You don't have to look forward to it. You just have to be willing to do it. And that willingness, that choice to show up and do the hard things, even when you don't feel like it, that's what separates the people who build careers from the people who flame out. But here's the good news. Once you're willing to interrupt, there are things you can do to make those interruptions more effective. There are words you can use, frameworks you can follow, psychology you can leverage. And that's where we're going to explore next. Hey, thanks for checking out this clip from the Sales Evolution Lab podcast. If you found value in this lesson, be sure to hit subscribe to evolve for the future of selling. And if you want the full breakdown, the deeper stories, the practical toolkit, check out the full episode. Just click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.